Okay, we're going to go on now to page 94. Option agreement between you and the seller. And frankly, this one's pretty easy. It's a two-pager, and incidentally, when you print this out, I forgot to tell you this, the lease purchase agreement with the seller that we just went over will fit on one 8x14 sheet of paper front and back. One piece of paper. The less pieces of paper in an agreement, the better I like it. And the better the other side likes it too. Which these realtor agreements are out there right now are just absolutely ridiculous. They're a book. I mean, you got to go through a book of crap because they build them to apply to any kind of a transaction, and 60% of the agreement doesn't even apply to what you're doing. It's places where you can check off where it does apply, but boy, does it look intimidating when you pull the thing out. Well, I don't like my agreements to look intimidating. And I'll tell you something, guys, when you're dealing with the elderly, you better keep it simple. Really simple. Because if you don't, you're going to lose them. If you're dealing with the elderly and you pull out some long agreement with a bunch of language in it they don't understand, you're going to lose them. They're going to walk, they're going to go away, they simply will not put up with it. So the simpler the better. And the same thing when you're constructing your language and your terminology. I used to say 6th grade language. Not anymore. 3rd grade language. 3rd grade. Do not overestimate the intelligence of the American population. And if you think I'm wrong, watch Jaywalking on the Jay Leno show, where he interviews people out on the street. Okay. Get into your option agreement. Let's start on page 95. Look, this is the option to purchase real estate agreement. It's really simple. It's 2 pages, 8x11. It's not complicated at all. And frankly, it's not even hardly worth me covering because it's a purchase and sale agreement is all it is with the word options at the top. What is the difference between an option and a purchase and sale agreement? Purchase and sale agreement says I will buy. Option agreement says I may buy, but I'm in no obligation to do so. Option agreement says if I don't buy, you keep my deposit, but doesn't the purchase and sale agreement say the same thing? But an option agreement says option on it. And this one says use to option for cash, get signed in home or in front of an attorney. I assume you know that they will not say that at the top of the option agreement on the Gold Club site, right? Okay, that's just for your eyes only. This one says that we're given $100 consideration in paragraph 1 and that our option price in paragraph 5 says we're paying $750,000 for the house. And in paragraph 3 it says we got 3 months term. And if we want to build in extensions in paragraph 4, we just check off what's applicable. And frankly, the rest of it says just standard stuff. There's nothing weird, complicated about it here. You fill in the state where the governing law applies, and you've got yourself an option agreement. And I tell you, if you read this agreement, it's written in layman's terms. You should easily be able to understand it. Now, should all of you take any agreement that you intend to use and read it carefully in the privacy of your own home with silence around you, at least once. Yes. If you'll do it when you're trying to go to sleep, instant insomnia cure. You will not get through it without falling asleep. But you should know what this thing says. And then when you get ready to fill these things out, after a few times, you'll know exactly where to go fill in the blanks. You don't have to go read the thing over and over again. I can fill out a purchase and sale agreement for any kind of transaction, I don't care what it is, to buy or sell in less than 60 seconds. Because I'm only focusing on the blanks. And there's only a handful of them you fill in. All right, on page 97, notice of real estate option agreement. This is the one you get the seller to sign if you intend to record it, or even if you don't, so you cloud the title so that they cannot sell the house behind your back. And if you'll read it, it's self-explanatory. It says basically that you simply have an option to purchase the property, and it tells when it expires, and it is notarized at the bottom. You will not record anything that is not notarized with witness. Got to have notary, got to have witness, or you can't record it. This one is set up to get signed and notarized, if you wish, so that it can be recorded. And the seller signs this. All right, on the next page, it talks about standard purchase and sale agreement, but this one is assuming that I'm going to the seller's house and I'm buying with owner financing with the intent of assigning it to another buyer and collecting an assignment fee. This particular deal is not one I want to personally close on because it requires a $20,000 down payment that I don't want to put up. Plus, it requires a $1,500 a month payment that I don't see how I'm going to make a spread on this $200,000 purchase. Plus, it's likely it's at retail price. So I'm writing up this contract with the intent of finding somebody to assign it to who will give me more money than $20,000 that they need to buy the house. This is the same purchase and sale agreement that I have been using for 20 some odd years, that I created a long time ago, derived from a real estate licensee contract modified to my needs. And incidentally, it looks better than this on your site. This one's a little bit whacked on the format, but the words are all the same. This agreement also can be printed out in 8 by 14 double-sided one page. There's nothing weird about it, except that if you'll read it, look in paragraph 1A, that just calls for the $10 deposit that you give the seller, which is all I ever give a seller, a FSBO seller. And then in 1C calls for the balance of the $20,000 down payment. $19,990 is due at closing. And then it says the seller in 1E is going to take back a mortgage of $180,000. So for a total purchase price of $200,000. Please note that the purchase price is exact and that the down payment is exact. If I'm taking over a debt, the purchase price will always be approximate because the debt changes daily. The important part of this agreement is in paragraph 2B because it describes the seller financing note. It says that it's a valid purchase money first mortgage or deed of trust, and that it's at 4% interest, payable at $1,500 per month for 150 months, and that the privilege of prepayment does apply. What does that mean? That means there's no prepayment penalty if we wish to pay it off early, and that it will not be due on sale. Therefore, the seller cannot stop me from selling the property with owner financing or assigning or any way I want to sell it. I can sell it and let my buyer take over the debt. The seller cannot stop me from doing it because there will be no due on sale clause in the mortgage I give back to the seller. Now guys, it's up to you to make sure your attorney does not put a due on sale clause in the note you give back to the seller or in the mortgage. It's in the mortgage because it's standard to have the due on sale clause in it, but it's not standard if I've checked here that it's not to be in it. Your attorney can only do what your contract says. So I wrote that in there so you can put the check mark in the right place. And now when the seller signs this, they have agreed that there will not be a due on sale clause in the $180,000 mortgage you're giving back to them. That frees up your exit. Buyer's closing costs, seller's closing costs. Standard stuff. When I'm buying and the seller's getting money, I want them to pay most of the closing costs. And that's the way this is laid out. They're paying recording, they're paying note stamps, they're paying intangible tax on the $180,000. They're paying for the appraisal, they're paying, or I'm sorry, the buyer is paying, that would be you. But on the other hand, are you paying it? No, whoever you're assigning it to is paying it. The seller, however, is paying the biggest chunk. The two biggest costs in most closings are transfer tax and title insurance. The seller's paying both of them, making it easier on my buyer. The checks that I check for the buyer cost a lot less than the checks I check for the seller. Do you need to know what closing costs are where you live? Say yes, Ron. Only got to learn it once. You got to go find out from an attorney, from a title company, from somebody who knows, or even a good realtor, okay, how do I determine closing costs? How do I compute them? Your transfer tax is X. It's not going to change. It's probably some percentage of the sales price or some dollars per thousand. In Florida, it's $7 per thousand of the purchase price. We call it dock stamps. So if the purchase price is $200,000, I know I got $1,400 worth of transfer tax right there. So it's, and if I know there's a $180,000 loan being created back to the seller in Florida, I know that cost $5.20 per thousand. So whatever that comes out to, that's another close to $1,000. Okay, in this case, the buyer's paying that, the seller's paying the transfer tax. The transfer tax costs more. All right, by the way, should your attorney review all your agreements at least once before you start using them and make sure they comply with your state? Yes or yes? Yes. All right, don't forget that. All right, the rest of it, standard stuff. If you read it, you'll get it. Paragraph 10 calls for the closing time. Now, this is kind of important in this transaction because my intent is to get a contract to buy it and then assign that contract to a buyer. And in this case, I'm giving myself 60 days to close. As you'll see in paragraph 10, 60 days. Actually, I'm giving myself 60 days after the date of satisfaction of all conditions in paragraph 19. What that means is I'm giving myself 60 days after all the other conditions of this contract have been met. So I got plenty of time to go find my buyer. By the way, if I have not found a buyer within 60 days, I'm going to quit looking. Don't care anymore. If I can't sell this house and the market bring me more than $20,000 down with owner financing and no bank qualifying within 60 days, I don't need to extend it another 30, 60. I'm done. We're going to go pick some more low-hanging fruit. Especially true when I've got a big buyer's list that I'm trying to cater to. Remember, I'm not lease optioning this house. I'm selling it with owner financing. Can I almost always get more down payment selling it than I can lease optioning it? Yes, almost always. All right. Rest of it, pretty standard stuff, guys. And in fact, you guys all need to get accustomed and acquainted with that document right there, because that is the same agreement you use to pay cash for a house if it's not listed, to buy with owner financing, to sell even if you're selling for cash through a mortgage originator, to sell with owner financing. If any time there's a purchase or a sale involved of any type, that's the agreement that you're going to use. This is covered clearly in your green Pretty House cash flow system, and it's got several different uses in there and contracts reflecting that and examples filled out. In this case, I'm only using it if I intend to assign the contract. Now, would I use the same contract if I intend to purchase it and then sublease or then lease it out to a tenant buyer? I would, but the numbers would be different. Because there would be a lot less down payment and there'd be a less monthly payment. And there might not even be any interest in it if I intend to stay in the deal. But it's still the same contract. So you got to get very familiar with this agreement. I'll tell you, you don't have to use my agreement. You can use any agreement you want, but you won't find a better one. And if you take my agreement and get used to it, you'll see that it's got some pretty user-friendly stuff in there for you. For example, let's say you're taking over a debt subject to, look at paragraph 1G. It says existing mortgage balance and come to property to be taken subject to by a buyer. Bill right in. It doesn't say I'm going to assume it, it says I'm going to take it subject to. It's built right into the contract. So anyway, this is as good as any, better than most. It's all the complexity you need. You don't need the realtor stuff in it because you're not a realtor. You don't need to protect your commissions. You don't need to do all the CYAs that the realtors do because they have a license. At the end of this contract, on page 100, way down at the end, on page 100, you'll see that the last thing it says is that the seller, by the signature below, acknowledges the receipt of $10 cash as a binder deposit. Just a note, if you get a contract signed and you put down there that the sellers received the $10, you better make darn sure they received the $10. Or, I'm sorry, that they signed this. Because this serves as the receipt that they've received the $10. If they do not sign this, there's always a dispute. Well, they didn't give me the binder, therefore the contract is null and void. And if you can't prove you did give them the binder, the contract is null and void. Anytime they want to challenge it. You don't have a contract until you have a meeting of the minds, until consideration has changed hands. However, does consideration have to be money? This is a big misconception. It does not have to be money, but when it's as easy as giving up $10 to prove the consideration, make it money. Consideration can be love and affection. Consideration can be the fact that you're willing to enter into an agreement. It does not have to be money. But it's a whole lot easier to prove the consideration changed hands when you exchange a little bit of money. And $10 is all I give any FSBO seller. There's no need to give them any more. There's never an issue about the deposit. It doesn't even come up. They don't even know they're getting one until you whip out $10 and ask them to sign that. It's not what's on their mind. If it is what's on their mind, you're in front of the wrong seller. You've got a totally unmotivated seller. Okay. Let's move on to when to get an attorney involved. Then we got to get to selling houses.